Hey everyone, Dan Abbate here. Great to see everyone again. I'm excited to do my second mentoring session now for all of you, and I've got a great list of questions here that we might as well just jump right into it. I think no reason to delay. Okay, so here we go. So our first question comes from Adam Drake. I lead a team of financial advisors. I own the company, and I will be hiring an assistant in the next few months. This will be our only non advisor employee. Should I focus my hiring on serving existing clients and operations, which I feel we aren't being as consistent as we should be, or solely on sales and marketing, or a mix? Does hiring a jack of all trades ever really work, or should I just commit to either sales or service? I understand if I commit to one or the other, these are different types of people I'm looking for. Also, what questions can I ask myself and my team to get more clarity? All right, Adam. So, here's my thoughts on that right away. If you're, I like that you're hiring an assistant. I think that's a great idea. I think that anyone who has the ability to do that financially within their business, in fact, I would almost argue that even if you can't do it financially in your business, you need to look at that because if you're not the assistant, if you don't have an assistant, then you are the assistant is kind of like the way that I like to look at it. So so anyway, so as you decide, you make this decision. It really depends on where you're at with your company, right? You're absolutely right in what you're saying. That you can't expect the same person to do these two very different things, operations versus sales. I would probably ask you what's more critical in your business right now. Are you the salesperson, or are you more of the operational type person? Like me, for example, I'm more of an operational type person. So if I'm going to hire somebody, if I hire an operational type person, then I'm essentially just buying myself more time to go make sales, but I'm not a sales type person, so then I don't do that well. So I would say it depends very much on who you are, first and foremost, and then secondarily, who do you want to hire? Do you want to hire that salesperson to get them out there doing that? But I would say that you're not going to be able to hire a jack of all trades because that's not going to get what you want. And then the other thing too is that it depends on where you're at from like a business process perspective. What are the actual duties of the person that you're trying to hire? Um, in what way are they going to support you and your operations? So getting clear on that, if you haven't already, write up a clear job description as you imagine it to be and how it would be most helpful. Try it because you're aware of it. Try not to lump conflicting um, operations or things that people have to do, um, like that wouldn't exist in the same person. Um, try to make a realistic job description for this person, and then pass it around your office. See what everyone else thinks about it. See if you caught everything um, the way that the way that you wrote it up. See if other people agree or don't agree. I would get more people involved in the conversation. It never hurts because a lot of times, especially if you're the boss, um, sometimes your perspective is different and maybe missing parts versus the people that are on the ground. So it's very helpful to get other folks' input as you move along. Um, yeah, so I think that's probably it for that one. Um, yeah, it really just depends on where you're at and first and foremost, who you are. And I would analyze that very closely. Okay, next question is from Heather Brockman. I partnered with a dog walking company and I'm looking for advice on how to draw up a legal contract so I can ensure I get paid for the clients I will be sending his way and protect me in the event I need to stop using him. Totally new avenue for me and I want to cover all my bases. All right, Heather. So, legal contracts in general, this is a good question. So, for me, and I'm not an attorney, although I've paid a lot of attorneys over time to write things up for me for different reasons. So I would say that whenever you're looking at a legal contract discussion, do I need to write something up? Do I not need to write it up? Do I need an attorney? Can I do it myself? All these sorts of questions. I would just say it depends on what the potential risk is. So if you're doing something, if you're writing something up where there's like it's a high dollar amount or a high loss potential. Then of course you want to bring in more horsepower as far as the legal side goes. You do want to bring in an attorney to write things up. If it's more of just an agreement between two people that are, fairly amicable and are and the dollar amounts are not huge, so like whatever your worst case scenario is, like in this particular case, so this sounds like this person's going to be sending you referrals and you're going to owe them some money. Okay, so how many referrals are they going to send you? How much money will you potentially owe them? If you're talking a few $100s a month, then it's not worth hiring an attorney because he's going to charge you a few $100s an hour to write something up. If you're talking tens of thousands of dollars a month, where there could be some confusion that could cause real harm to you or to the person you're dealing with, then maybe that's a little bit more worth the investment to write something up. So if you do end up writing something yourself, I would just suggest, find a contract that meets basically what you want, like something that already exists, and then just edit it. Like, it doesn't really matter. And then like put the person on the other side. And again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving you any like actual legal advice. This is just what I would do. I would just edit it and then hand it to the other person and be like, hey, what do you think of this? And then they'll, give you their input. 9 times out of 10, people won't even read it. They'll just give it back, sign it, and give it back to you, which isn't smart, by the way. You should read it. And if somebody gives you the opportunity to edit it, take the opportunity to edit it. But anyway, just work it out between the two of you, because at the end of the day, if the dollar amounts aren't huge, then it doesn't matter. Now, experience share on that. That was my attitude in relation to one of the businesses that I had, and we ran that way for a number of years, and everything was fine. And then utilizing that same agreement, all of a sudden we had a big win, where something that was, normally these agreements would yield a few $1,000s. All of a sudden, this agreement was yielding hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it was the same agreement that we had before. And in that process, we lost out basically because of the agreement that we had. But that doesn't happen that often. But what it did do, though, I mean, the exciting side of that story is that the reason that changed is because the industry changed and we had this big uptick. And sure, we lost out on that one deal because of that agreement, but we learned from that, and then from there we reduced or included an extra, verbiage or whatever in the agreement going forward, so that we can then capture all that value on new deals that we rolled out after that, and then we did fine. So the point is that if the numbers are high, then spend the money. If the numbers are low and the risk is low, and in worst case scenario isn't that big of a deal, then don't spend the money on it. Just write something up. A simple agreement between two people on a piece of paper that both people signed is a legal document. You don't need to have an attorney write it up. But again, I am not an attorney, so if you ask an attorney that, I'm sure they'll tell you something different. But that's how I would approach it. Okay, next question is from Adam Komorowski. Has anyone bought a local email list from a company? If so, what are key points to look for when dealing with companies that sell lists? Also, what email softwares did or do you use? Or is this just not worthwhile? Thank you. Good question, Adam. All right, so like with any marketing initiative, you have to be able to measure your results, right? So we don't know if any of this is a good idea or not from just the outside here. And you don't know if it's a good idea or not either. That's the problem with marketing. Marketing is all about data and measuring. So what I do if I'm buying a list is I usually look for the same list from 2 or 3 different providers. So like you're talking a local email list. So I might look at 2 or 3 different providers and try to get them both to give, or 2 or 3 to give me a sample. If I can get them to give me a sample, great. I don't have to pay for it. Or if I could just buy a very small amount from 2 or 3 different people, and then measure the quality of that first batch. So like, let's say I can get 1,000 emails from 2 or 3 different groups. Some of them are going to be duplicative, so I'd have to kind of run that against each other to see which ones are duplicating. what you find a lot of times is that like some of the lists are just total crap, and so um, you can probably eliminate one of your providers immediately just because they sold you junk. And then the other two, you could kind of like, square them up so you're not double emailing people, and then just do a test and see kind of, who's, what stuff is working, what's not. Um, so like kind of you got to check your data quality, and then you've got to measure your results, right? So your results are going to be dependent not only on the quality of the list, but the targeting that you chose, the messaging that you do, and all the other many factors that go into running a successful email campaign. So, I would suggest that you take it slow and you watch each individual step within the process, and make sure that you don't jump to the conclusion that something is working or not working. Um, you'll find that a lot in many of the times when I answer questions. It'll be I'm always focused on measuring, like in all of this business stuff. Like it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's marketing or operational or whatever. It's all about measuring your um, it's like the scientific method, right? You come up with a hypothesis, you create an experiment, and then you measure it, and then you kind of go back and redo your hypothesis. It's the same thing, especially with marketing stuff. Um, you think that these providers of these lists are good, so you try three of them, and then you realize through your experiment that one of them is junk and the other two are equal, so you just pick one, and then you go through your messaging and you do all the, do all the little steps. You have to do all the little steps, especially with marketing. Um, to determine if it's working or not. And then it might just not work. It might be possible that, that's one of the things that I hate about like pay-per-click and a lot of Facebook advertising and all that sort of stuff, is that there's this expectation that this is like a good way to advertise and a good way to make money, but it just may not be for your situation. It may be the fact that the market has already bid up the prices on these particular keywords, um, to the point where that they're not profitable for the way that your business is set up. And so it's just you can throw more and more money at it all day long, and it just won't work. So you have to take those little steps, and do all the measurement all along the way. Um, that's the difference between just kind of throwing money at the wall and seeing what sticks, and actually being methodical about it so that you know what works. Because when you do know what works, you can always just scale it up. That's really where you want to go. Oh, and then as far as software goes, I've used Constant Contact, I've used MailChimp, I've used HubSpot, I've probably used all of them. It depends again what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to send out, flat emails, kind of on your own, they all have some sort of drip campaigns and things that you can set up. Um, but in my experience and opinion, one's as good as the other. You just have to decide whichever one you like. I think the one that's the best is the one that you actually use, right? And that you use fully, and that meets the need that you've laid out for yourself. That's really the best way to decide. Um, there's no advantage of one over the other. All right, cool. Next question from Helena Drio. Hello. Hello, Helena. When figuring out how to price a product or service, would you suggest comparing prices/value with your competitors and other companies? Is there a specific formula for pricing a product/service, or does it solely base on the value offered in market pricing? Is it better to lower your price and up the value compared to your competitors? Any suggestions would help. I'm asking for future reference. Thank you. All right, Helena. You asked a lot of stuff there. Those are all good questions here. So comparing prices, it depends, right? So if you're in a perfectly competitive market, like if you're selling a commodity, then the only thing that matters is the market price. If you're selling a commodity, so like if you're selling gold or milk or whatever, like stuff that you can just look at a market price and then that's it. Then you'd better just be super efficient because you're going to make money off of efficiency. If you're thinking about having the option to set a price, then you're probably not in a perfectly competitive market. You're probably in what they call monopolistic competition, meaning that there's an opportunity to control a part of your market where you can set the price. And because you have some unique identifier, you have some unique value proposition, that allows your price to be different than someone else's. So it has a lot to do with what your value proposition to your customers are. And I always tell people to think in terms of value that they're creating for their customers, right? So if you're, if your business is creating $10 worth of value for them, then you can set your price anywhere up to $10, right? Because if it goes over $10, no one's going to buy anything for you, from you. And so I guess it depends on how much value your company is driving. So I would try to measure that first, like what is the real value that I drive for people. I would look at competitors. I mean, just to get a sense, I suppose. Like if you're in a business that's highly, like people do their research and just go to the cheapest provider, like that's kind of that's an issue because that does put you more into like a commodity type business, which if you're a service business that's in that category and you can't differentiate yourself, so you're just competing on price, then that's a rough spot to be in. Now, you did ask an interesting question as part of your question here. Is it better to lower your price and up the value compared to your competitors? That's true, right? That's absolutely true. If you can lower your price and up your value, that's super great. But the problem is, can you do that profitably, right? So whenever I set prices, I first look at, what is the market kind of doing in general, right? So because you got to know if you're in the ballpark. But then beyond that, I look at it and I say, well, how much money do I want to make on this to make it worth my while? Because the market might be such that I don't want to be in that business. It might just be that people are so, price conscious that it's not worth it to me. And I'm not going to be able to create some unique, or I don't have any ideas of creating any unique proposition that's going to make it so that people will pay me more. But if you can offer more for a lower price and still make money and be happy with the money you're making, then that's a great, strategy. I generally try to go the other way. I generally try to say, I'll give you more value and I'm going to charge you more, because I'd rather have fewer customers that are less price sensitive because they're more focused on the value I provide. And then when I do the calculation, you said something about a formula, I think, in here. The formula that I use is depending on the service, depending on what your operational cost structure is I look at it and I just say, okay, it costs me $2 in direct cost to service this customer. It cost me $2. All right, and I want my direct cost to be a third. Let's make it 20%. Let's make it more profitable. I want to make my direct cost 20% of my revenue. So if I'm charging $10, I've got $2 worth of direct cost. So that gives me $8 worth of money to spend on GSA, which is general selling and administrative. So I have plenty of money to spend on my overhead, on my marketing. That's always an important one when people are figuring out their pricing. Don't forget you have to build your marketing and your sales costs directly into your price, because if you don't, then you'll never sell enough to be able to sell. You will never make enough money to be able to sell any of it. So let's say that, so our direct cost is 20%. Our GS&A is another, let's call it 30%. So now we have a 50% margin. And maybe we have the business that we have to do additional R&D, or we have to do, additional things like that. So we throw another 20+% in for that. And maybe we can get ourselves to about a 20-25% profit margin, net profit margin. That's what I like to shoot for. Whenever I lay it out on paper, I always try to shoot for, 20 to 30% net profit margin, because if I don't shoot for it, no one else is going to shoot for it. So I'd like to start there. Because if I can't on paper at least get there, then I know I might have to really think about what I'm doing. So maybe that's kind of a good way to think of it. Your direct cost is 20 to 30%. your GS&A is, another, call it 30-40%, then you're going to have your net profit in 20-25%, something like that. Try to kind of set your pricing on a per unit basis so that you can get up to that. That's what I would do. And if you can't figure that out, how to get there, then you might have to look at other, what is the value that you're driving to make sure you can get there. Or maybe you're giving away too much value. That actually came up with a company I'm working with the other day. She was offering all this stuff, and we broke it down, and we ended up with about half of it was really stuff that people didn't care about, but was costing her money. And so we just took that stuff out, which saved her a ton of money and a ton of effort, and the client doesn't care. Like, they didn't care about that stuff. So that's important too, to kind of look at your value proposition and make sure you're offering stuff that really drives value for the client and that they really care about. So that when you set your pricing, you're setting it in a way that really connects with their need, and you're maximizing your profit without giving them too much, is another way to look at it. Okay, Aaron Sheeks is our next question person. Aaron Sheeks. Okay, needs advice. We have a sellable software tool that has current revenue coming in. While we are slowly making development updates, we're not building as fast as we can sell the product and are waiting for updates to tie together a few data sources. Question: do we continue to wait and scale responsibly, knowing $50,000 a month is coming in August or September, or while the market is still coming back from COVID shutdowns, do we spend the development and integration costs now to have our product closer to finish by August and September? Also, redesign is part of the upgrades. Okay, that is a good question. Let us see where we want to go with that. So I'm a software development guy. I've done a lot of software development in my time. A lot of times for my own internal systems and processes, automating of internal systems. So there's a couple things here. What I would say is I would be, you said knowing 50,000 per month is coming. I would say, how much do you know that? Like, is that for sure? Like, is there a signed contract and there's 50,000 a month coming? In which case I would say for sure, then just go for it. If that's the case, if you know that, because someone like another larger business is committed to giving you 50,000 a month, and you're pretty confident that that's going to happen, then go ahead, start your development. Go for it. If you're not exactly sure that 50,000 a month is coming, and you're not exactly sure how the COVID shutdowns are going to affect the viability of that revenue, yeah, I would probably take it a little bit more cautiously, because there's no reason to rush. I've been in a position where I've built out things to get ahead of it because I wanted to wrap my hands around the operational thing that I could control. Well, I mean, for example, we had a company that we were redeveloping a real estate, commercial real estate, and we were building things that we thought people wanted, and we built one of them in downtown Albuquerque, and as part of like a downtown revitalization thing that the government was pushing and the state was pushing, the whole thing. And so we invested in that, and we built something that was way more built than what was needed. And the reason we did that is because we were building what we wanted and weren't really listening to what the market was saying. So in this case, I would say it's kind of the same thing. Make sure that you're building what the market needs and what the market wants right now, and not just focusing on the thing that you can do. And you may not be. I'm just hypothesizing here. Because it's sometimes easy to focus on the things that you can do versus the things that are hard, like perhaps knowing for sure if you're getting that 50,000 a month coming in or not. It goes back to that theory of constraints thing, which I mentioned on my last session. in which I talk to everybody about. I mean, the theory of constraints basically says there's only one thing that's really holding up your throughput in your manufacturing process, or you can apply it to any process or your life or your business. That one thing, that's the hard thing. That's the thing that if you control that, you really do have total control over your business, and you have total control over its growth and all these things. If you, so like in this case, it doesn't sound to me like the development is the constraint, because it sounds like you can just choose to do the development or not. So if you can just choose it or not choose it, it's not the constraint. So the constraint is probably the revenue side. So I would say that you spend more time focusing on the revenue side and really getting a handle of what the timing is of that and how you're going to grow that, and then do the development as part of the service to that revenue that you now have a clearer picture of. That's my thought based on this paragraph. There's probably lots of details I'm missing, but that's what jumps to mind. I hope that's helpful. All right, next question is from Roland Burneth. It's e-commerce related. Our family business is in the seasonal decor, home and garden decor business. I'm building our website, just started 7 to 8 orders in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Good job, cool. The entire concept is to be Decor Plaza, a mall of decor. Thus, we have thousands of products online. I'm aware I cannot market it all, but also in case I niche down too much, the rest of the products lose relevance. How do you properly market a web store that is not only focusing on one specific niche, but contains several niches, and the main aim would also emphasize our web store at the Decor Plaza that has everything decor related? Do I build a niche by niche? Thanks in advance. All right, Roland. Good question. So my thought about that is that whenever you hear about big companies that have started, like your ambition of a mall of decor. So you have all these things, thousands of things online in this particular category. It's similar to, like, let's use an example that everybody knows, Yelp, right? So if you use Yelp as an example, when Yelp started, Yelp, of course, is national, I guess international company now, where you can review different things, right? Different restaurants or different places you go and all these sorts of things. You get your Yelp review from people who went there. So the question is that, so their scale is very large, just like you're trying to get to a very large scale, but they have very specific niches, let's call it that, because in order for them to succeed, they have to have those niches succeed, right? They're just an aggregate of all of these niche locations. So, for example, Yelp's go-to-market strategy, as well as Uber's go-to-market strategy, as well as Airbnb's market strategy, as well as all these people that have rolled out kind of like large, geographically diverse things, they all focused in the niche first. They all focused in a niche first. They all started in one spot and then made that successful. And then using that same playbook, made the next thing successful. And then to the point where you look at them now and you say, oh, look how big they are. But in reality, they just focused on one thing and then just kept kept rolling out that niche, making that niche business successful, and then aggregating that niche business with the next niche business. So I would say that the ambition of creating the entire Decor Plaza is a good one, but I would say you're going to do that niche by niche, not as like as a whole thing. So like, yeah, that's what I would say. I would say focus your niche, know who your target for each niche is, and then pull them into the ecosystem, right? I mean, eBay is another good example of that. eBay started, selling action figures like to comic book nerds, right? Like that was kind of like where it all started, and then they went into all these other things. And then as they went into all these other things, you start to get those sort of like network effects, because there's other things there for people to see. I'm coming here for action figures, but I can also buy a car. I can also buy whatever else, computer parts. I came there for one thing, but now there's more things available to me. It's kind of the same thing with this. I think as you focus your niche and then you focus your marketing to drive and make sales in that niche, as you bring those people, they start to look at other stuff that's there, and then you try to cross sell to them within your category. Yeah, that would be my approach. Cool. Belle Donovan is our next question person. Our current project is selling magnetic false eyelashes. A lot of feedback we have received is that the prospects are not sure which style will suit them. We would love to have some sort of app that accesses their camera and places our range of lashes on them. Any ideas where to start? I've heard stories of people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on apps only for it to still not be finished. So choosing a trustworthy developer is tricky also. Thank you so much in advance. Awesome. I like that idea. I think that's really cool. Totally a good idea. So again, going back to the development thing, I do have a lot of experience in development and working with different developers, and you're totally right. It's very easy to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and then have nothing. So you want to try to avoid that, obviously. So I would say do not go online looking for a developer. Make sure you get a developer, someone who will refer you to someone or a group that that they've already used and that they had a good experience with. You also are probably going to need someone to manage the kind of oversight of it. Do not just let the developer lead you. I would say that having kind of a third-party perspective. It can be someone it could be someone from our mentor group or something like that can kind of just give you some feedback, another perspective as the developer is telling you things. That's helpful because then you don't have to. It's just kind of a gut check, and if they're telling you something, to make sure that that something is exactly what they want. What you want to happen. I would also recommend too, if possible, don't get caught up on hourly rates and all that baloney business when you're looking at prices for developers. There's a lot of times where, Indian and offshore development groups advertise very cheap hourly rates. The problem with hourly rates, of course, is it depends on how many hours and that it takes you. So if you charge half as much, but you take twice as much time, you're charging the same amount. And then also quality is a major issue for development that is a lot of times overlooked, because if you do spend a lot of money, you're going to want to make sure it's maintainable, whatever you develop. And so good quality work in the development space is worth a lot as well, because it'll save you a ton of money down the road. And so don't be shy about using American or Canadian developers. There are some good offshore spots as well. Don't get me wrong, but I would just be quality and delivery is going to be as important as whatever the price is. Like, that's almost secondary as you try to figure it out. So I have some recommendations. I'm sure there's other folks that have had experience that can refer you to some development people that can kind of get you going in the right direction for a reasonable and safe price. Okay. The next question is from Yolindi. So I've had a side gig with a friend for 2 years to earn money to help my business grow. This year has shown exceptional growth in my business to a point where my side gig is too much to handle along with my business. I feel like it's a distraction and takes away valuable time that I could be spending on sales and business as well as personal growth. I run my friend's entire back end, all paperwork, tax prep, book balancing, etc., and I deal with very sensitive financial information. I have open access to all accounts and financials, so this isn't something I could just hand over to somebody else. I feel stuck. How can I exit this without completely turning my friend's business upside down? All right, great question. This is a very interesting point that you bring up. So I would say, first, all the paperwork, tax prep, book balancing, all that stuff, right? So all that important stuff that you can't just hand off to someone else. Well, the truth is you can just hand it off to someone else. There's lots of companies, legitimate companies, that do bookkeeping and do those sorts of activities. I have a company that we work with for all of our companies that handles all that stuff, and they have access to all our bank accounts and all these things. We have an outsourced service that does all that stuff for us. Um, so that so the sensitivity part of it isn't really the issue. There's plenty of companies that do that. My uh, reading between the lines here, I think perhaps, is more that you can't hire someone to do that at the rate that you're charging, which is probably not much, if anything, from your question. Which means if you're not getting paid to do the work that you've been doing at a rate that aligns with what an outside service provider would charge, then that means that you're essentially subsidizing your friend's business with your time by not charging that person what you should be charging if she or he was to hire an outside service to do that same work. And this is a common theme among entrepreneurs at all levels, startups all the way to much larger. People don't take into account their own time, and because they can get it cheaper by doing it themselves, they count it as a win. When in reality, they're essentially subsidizing the business by giving away their time for cheaper than they could have gotten it out on the public market. And this happens in big giant companies too. Like this happens, like big manufacturers will acquire a supplier, right? So they're going to do vertical integration. That's the problem with vertical integration that people always complain about. Vertical integration seems good in theory, but it always has these problems. This is one of those problems. The problem is a big manufacturing company buys a supplier, and when the supplier was independent, it was charging them the market rate. And then when they're bought by the large company, now all of a sudden the large company can influence their pricing back to them, so they lower their prices. So essentially they're shifting the profit margin of the supplier up to the acquiring company. And so is the acquiring company really more profitable now? No, it's not. It just shifted the profit margin from the smaller company to the larger company. And so it's the same thing with this. Is your friend's business really sustainable? If they were to hire an outside service to do what you're doing, if the answer is yes, if it would be the same difference, then great. But if the answer is no, they can't afford that, then you're essentially subsidizing their business with your time. So, what is the friendship implications of that? I would just say have a conversation about that and be like, look, this is the way the numbers are. And of course, people, they get upset about numbers sometimes. I've been in lots of positions where I've laid out numbers and then people get upset. But it's like, look, these are numbers. It's like, if you hire an outside person, it's going to cost you $1,500 a month to handle this stuff that I do. I'm doing it for you for free or for a few $100. That margin in between there is value that I'm providing that you couldn't otherwise get. So you like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I could do this for somebody else for $1,500 a month, whatever. So that would be my comment about that. Everyone be aware of how they spend their time and how they accidentally subsidize things that aren't working in their business or in others. All right. Ben Cantu. I am at the point with my business where I cannot scale, and it seems I cannot go over either an amount of money per month or a number of projects per month. I had this when I had 5 employees, and I also when I had 1 employee. I find it difficult to delegate tasks, but not in the way that I don't trust other people to do it, but because I find it time-consuming and I'd rather do it myself. Of course, this leads to frustration, and some of the work doesn't get done in time. A problem that I see in being unfocused on one project at a time. My focus now is on 3 projects/businesses, and this might be the thing that keeps me at this level. One business is an advertising agency where I deal with 15 to 20 businesses a month. What is the best way to work to avoid being a one-man show, even if I have a team behind you? Great question. This is a common issue as well as people's entrepreneurial journeys grow. So you said a lot of stuff here that I want to touch on. Okay, so for one thing, being unfocused, right? So being unfocused is a common issue among entrepreneurs, mainly because we see a world of possibilities, and then whenever you see a new possibility, you want to, take a hold of it. And so, just generally being focused is an important skill that's worth being deliberate about as you go through your time. Um, so that could be very well causing your issue, as you suggest. The other thing that I thought was interesting is the delegation part. So not trusting. I get that. I'm the same way. I trust people. I'm assuming people are going to do good for me, and I'm also the same in that it is time consuming to get them to do what I want them to do. Um, and I don't take the time. Like one of the things that I've been coached on is that I really think through everything that I'm doing, and I spend a lot of effort on my own thinking about these things, and then I don't adequately explain my thought process. I just tell people what the end result of my thought process is, and then expect them to understand where I'm coming from. So I've been told that I need to take more steps, more deliberate um, and better communication with people when I'm trying to get them on board with me and trying to get them to do what I want them to do or need them to do. Um, I'm told that I need to be more clear about that, and maybe it sounds similar here that if you're uh, not wanting to invest the time to train people up and to get them doing what you need them to do, then that is probably an issue. So my suggestion there would be kind of like what my suggestion up above a little bit was take the time to sit down and write it out. Like I know it sucks. Sit down, write it out. What is the process? What is the job description? What do I want them to do? Be very, very clear and detailed. And if you think you're being clear and detailed, look at it again and get even more clear and clear, like detailed, right? Like just write it out, do the exercise. Then when you start talking to the person, be prepared that I can't remember what the statistic is. I know Joel will probably know what it is, or one of the other guys will know what it is. Um, it has something to do with like if you spend, it might take you like 200 hours to train somebody. Let's just use that. It's 10% of a year, right? A work year. If it takes you 200 hours to adequately train somebody, you've invested 200 hours. So you're right. That's a lot of time to invest in somebody and to get them really dialed into what you need them to do. But then after that, you don't have to spend any more time on it. You have to spend 0 hours on that thing. So for an investment of 200 hours now, and again, it might not be that much. It might be 20 hours, it might be 5, depending what the system is, but just whatever it is. You made that investment in time now so that you have an infinite amount of time later. So that's the way you have to look at it. So you can't look at it like, oh, this takes a long time and I'll just do it myself. Because as long as you make that choice, you're always going to be doing it yourself and you're always going to be spending your own hours. And you kind of go back to that other thing. Are you subsidizing the business by doing it that way? Could you get somebody for $12 an hour or $15 an hour to be doing this thing that you're just doing yourself? Because if you are doing a $15 an hour task yourself, then you're a $15 an hour person. So if you're doing a $15 an hour job, why don't you just go get a job for $15 an hour and then don't have all the risk and don't have all the other stuff you have to worry about, because you really are getting your hourly rate. I have a book. Where is it? I don't know where it is. I'll have to look for it. I'll show you guys later. It's all about your hourly rate and raising your own personal hourly rate. And so whatever the lowest thing that you do is that you can buy in the public market, private, that's the rate that you're working at is, so keep that in mind. So yeah, it might be, you might need to invest a little bit of time to get someone else doing what you need them to do, but your hourly rate is severely affected if you keep making that choice. And if you are going to stay at those lower hourly rates, then there's no point in owning a business. There's no point in being on your own. You might as well just work for somebody else and just save all the risk and save all the headaches of being the boss. And yeah, and it doesn't help with how many employees you have. If you can't get out of that mindset, it's going to be it'll always be that for you. So you have to kind of get there. It doesn't matter how many employees you have. I would also say that if you're stuck at a particular amount per month, you're probably focusing way too much on operations. you need to focus your attention on the sales and marketing side of your business, because there's probably not a lot of process around that, and that's not getting executed daily in like a methodical sort of way, which would help drive past these revenue numbers. You're probably going horizontally instead of vertically. You're probably hitting a point where you can't move forward with that particular thing anymore, and then you're jumping to another business, as you suggested. You have multiple business or projects. You're probably like hitting a wall and then jumping sideways, hitting a wall and then jumping sideways. So you don't really ever drive revenue up. You really just kind of keep moving kind of laterally back and forth. Yeah, so I would look at that as well. Cool. All right, final question. I hope everybody is hanging in there. Helena Drio says, I hope you all are having a wonderful week so far. I am having a wonderful week. Thank you. I have scheduled a meeting to meet a potential client who I'll be doing a web design for. I have the meeting set for this Thursday in order to give myself time to get organized. I am in the middle of creating my first process for my business. I was unaware of how much I am lacking in this department. I am seeking some guidance. I am currently in the research phase of this project. I have created a detailed questionnaire in order to get a better idea of what the client is looking for. If we decide to work together, I will need to draft an agreement as to what is going to be done. I was curious about how to create legal documents for this type of project, and if you have any advice or resources I should seek out to better educate myself. Are there specific documents I need to cover my butt? Okay. This is very similar to the question up above as it relates to the legal documents. So same as before. I don't know what the scale of what you're doing is. Our business, we have a grant writing business for nonprofits, one of our businesses. And in that business, we're still using the agreement that I made, which was a version, which came off of an agreement that my wife made originally, like 15 years ago. Like she did it and ran it with like some period of time, and then I kind of like enhanced it a little bit, and we're still using that. And our customers in that pay us about $24,000 a year. So our risk, I guess you could say, is $24,000. Like if something goes horribly wrong and the agreement doesn't outline something properly and we have to give somebody all their money back for the whole year, that's the risk. So I would say in this case, it's the same thing. Depending on the scale, you either just build an agreement out, be as specific as you can, use other templates that you can Google and find online for stuff that you kind of like, take the stuff you like, get rid of the stuff you don't like that works, and call it a day. Or you can hire an attorney, tell them what you want to do, and they'll be happy to draft something up. So that is always an option if you want to spend the money and if it's worth spending the money. I would argue that kind of like the development question about do I develop software now because I know this money is coming, or do I wait till the money is here to do the development? I would suggest that you think of it kind of the same way. Maybe just make an agreement for this first one, see what happens. And then if it seems like it's picking up momentum and you want to make the investment with an attorney to really build something out that's like proper, then maybe you spend the money on that. It's kind of like the MVP sort of thing, minimum viable product. What do I minimally need to try something? Because odds are, especially at this phase, if you're just the first time you're rolling something out, it's probably going to change. And every time you change something with an attorney, you have to pay again. So I would suggest, again, trying your best that you can, on your own. Again, assuming that the scale isn't so big, and then if it all goes to hell, you don't mind paying, if there's a problem. But yeah, I would from a legal perspective, that would probably be my thoughts on that. And then as far as the process thing, you kind of skipped over that. You jumped down to the legal question, but then you also said creating my first process for my business. So I would suggest with that, what I like to do with process of any type is I try to draw it out. I don't know if you've done this or not, but I would suggest draw it out. Like literally, like there's great process mapping software that you can get. There's like online versions and everything like that you can really do the layout of process, if then kind of like, watch each individual step. If you take your process, your first, how did you say it? Detailed questionnaire. Perfect. Great. You've created a questionnaire. So what happens now? Here's the questionnaire. If they score above a 70%, then they go this direction in the process. If they score less than 30%, they go this way in the process. Like literally draw out the if-thens so that you really know and that you've covered all the steps in the process, and you've deliberately designed the process. Because if you deliberately design the process, then you can make it more efficient. And then you can use that and be like, oh, you know what? I don't actually need to do steps B and C. I can just skip over those because I can redraw it another way. When you get that bird's eye view by actually drawing out your processes, like by hand, it really allows you to kind of see what you're missing and then see how to make it better. And then see what you need. Maybe you don't even need some of the documents that you think you need, because when you draw out the process thing, maybe something changes. Like it's worth looking at that, throughout the entire time. The book that I wanted to recommend that I was thinking of earlier is called Time Really Is Money by a guy named Rob Slee. It's a great book. It talks all about how our job as entrepreneurs and as people that are trying to better themselves through entrepreneurship needs to be aware of their hourly rate. They have to be calculating their hourly rate all the time, so that they know if they're moving forward or not. And one of the tenets of the book is that you can't skip a level. So you have to be able to measure, all right, I'm at $20 an hour right now doing the work that I'm doing, and now I'm going to do something to try to get myself to $30, and I'm going to try to get myself to $60, and then you keep going up and up the ladder. And he talks about $5,000, $10,000 an hour type activities, but you have to have that infrastructure underneath. So maybe that's kind of the takeaway from today. That was kind of a common theme that came up multiple times, was be aware of your hourly rate as you do the different things that you do. Calculate it out so you really know what it is, the time that you spend working on your business. If you work 80 hours a week on your business, then you better be making $300,000-$400,000 a year. Otherwise, as an hourly rate perspective, you probably can get that same thing doing something else. So it's worth considering and knowing where you're at. Okay, that's it. Thank you. I really had a lot of fun with this today. I'm going to do another one in 2 weeks, I believe, because I had more questions that I want to get to. So if you have more questions, submit them through the website, and yeah, keep them coming. I want to do more of these. I really enjoy it. That's it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.